Okay, back in Access, we've created our table. So we have our information. It's over here in our navigation pane. You can see where it says address book. Here's our table. Now, if we come back over to our assignment, we are ready to do a query. We're going to create a simple query, and then we're going to create another simple query with criteria. Now, query is just a fancy name for question. So like instead of questioning the database, we're going to perform a query on the database. So here, the first thing we need to do is on the navigation pane, click on the address book table. And then we don't have to open it, we just need to click on it to activate it. That lets Access know, hey, we're going to do something that's related to this table. So here we're going to come up here to the Create tab, and we've got all these different things that we can create, and right here is our query. We've got Query Wizard and Query Design. So we're just going to use the Query Wizard this time. It's very easy to use, as you'll see. Now we can make 4 different types of queries if we wish, with simple query, cross-tab query, find duplicates, or find unmatched. The only one we need to worry about for this class is the simple query. We're just going to do a simple one. So we're going to say OK. And then here, if we didn't have a table already selected, we could click on this little arrow right here, and all the tables and all the queries we already have would show up in here. You can combine tables and queries to do queries, and you would use the query design to do that. But for a simple one, you would just use one table or one query. Here we've got all the fields that are available in our table, and it's very important that you choose the fields in the order that you want Access to look at them. I mean, think of a telephone book. When a telephone book is sorted, it's usually sorted by last name and then first name. Imagine if the telephone book was sorted by first name. It would look different than it does now. Or what if it was sorted by last name and then city and then first name? It would look different than it does now. So it's very important that you put the fields in the correct order that you want Access to look at them. So right now we want the last name, so we're going to select that and then click over here on that little chevron. And we want to jump down to city, and we're going to move that over. And we want state, and then we want zip code. Okay. So if you don't get them in the right direction, you can just click on this arrow to move it back over. So it should be last name, city, state, and then zip code. And now we're going to click on the next, and this is where we can put the name of it. We're just going to leave it the same, and now we're going to open up the query. So we're going to click Finish. And so now you can see we have a query. It has all the information from the address book, but now all we're looking at is the last name and the city and the state. And we've got our address book query. So now we're ready to close the query. So we're going to click over here on this little bottom button. Don't click on the top. If you click on the top, you're closing the database. We're going to click on the bottom, close the query. It's automatically saved. You don't have to do anything else. It's automatically saved. Now, we want to get a little more detailed on our query. So we're going to open up the query back up. So we're going to double click it to open it. Right now we're in Datasheet view. Excuse me. We're going to change it to Design view. So we're going to come up to the Home tab. Then over here in View, change it to Design view. Now in Design view, this is where we can see the tables that we have and all of the fields that are in the table. You'd be able to add tables to here if you needed to. If we had more than one table, right here, we could show different tables. You could show different queries. Down here at the bottom are the fields, and you can see it's a little more detailed than what we saw in the Query Wizard. We've got our field name here across the very first line, and then it lets you know what address book. Again, if we had more than one table, it would be the different tables that the information came from here. We can sort alphabetically. The Show button is whether or not we want it to show in the results of our query. Maybe we want it to be considered in our query, but we don't want it to show in the results. Then next we have criteria. And the criteria is when we want to get more specific about what we want to see. And in this case, we only want to see those people from Kansas. So we're going to come over here to the state, and in the criteria row, we're just going to type in KS, and then tab or enter. And Access is going to automatically put the little quote marks around it there. This is where it gets really important, because the only results that are going to appear when we run this query are queries that have the state of KS. So if somebody accidentally misspelled it, maybe they put SK, it's not going to show in our results. So it's very important when you enter data in a database that you do it correctly. So we're going to come up here on the ribbon on the Design tab, and you've got this little exclamation point, which is Run. And we're going to click on that. It's going to run our query, and now you can see the only things we see in our query are the people from the state of Kansas. Now, it doesn't mean that the other guys aren't there, they're just not showing up in this query. Now we want to save this query with a new name. We can't just hit save because we opened up the address book query. We want to have two different queries. So we're going to go to File and go Save As, and we want to save the object. This is an object within our database. We're going to save the object, Save As, and we are going to call it Family in Kansas. Oh, save it as a query. Here's the name up here. And we're going to say OK. So now we have two queries. I'm going to close this here. And you can see we have two different queries down here at the bottom. And so that's how you create queries in Access. It's real easy, and you can get more complicated with them, believe me, but that's the way you create queries. We're going to go on with this one and going to go ahead and create the form. So again, we're going to click up here on the address book, and if I open up the address book, you can see how if we want to enter new information, you click down here at the bottom and you type the information in. Some people don't like entering information in like that, and they'd rather have a form. So it's real easy to create forms in Access. We're going to just make sure that the address book is selected, then come up to Create. Then right over here we have Form, and we're going to just click on that form, and it automatically creates a form based on all of the fields that we have in our table. Now you can, if you see up here on the layout tools, you can get more detailed how you want the form to look. We're not going to worry about that in this class, but you can get more detailed with the forms. Up here in our view, right now we're in layout view, which is where we can change it, and then design view is where you can get even more specific with changes. And now we're going to change to form view, and this is where we can actually add information. So down here at the bottom, it lets us know we have record 1 of record 5. If I click on this little sunburst icon, I can put in a new record. So I can put in a new person. And just put him in here. And maybe this person is from Kansas. And as soon as I get to the very last one and I hit the tab key, it's going to enter it in. And so now we have 7 records. And if I close this form, it says, do you want to save the changes? And say yes, again, in Access. Don't worry about saving because it's always going to tell you whether or not you need to. We're just going to leave this form name as address form instead of address book. We're going to make address form, and we're going to say OK. So now we got the tables, the address form. Now remember we added that name in the form. So if we click up on Families in Kansas now, we double click to run it, that new person is going to be there. So when you create your database and you create your forms and your queries and your reports, as you enter other information in your table, everything else is going to be updated. Click on the address book. See, there's Donald Duck. We entered that in the form. but it enters in right here. Now maybe Hermione Granger's moved and she's not in Kansas anymore. You can just click up here and you can just put the new information in, and then the next time you run the query, it would automatically be updated. The last thing we're going to do in Access is the report. And again, we're just going to make sure our address book is selected here. And we're going to come up here to create. And we have all these different reports. We can get very detailed with our reports. We're just going to use the report wizard. And again, if we click on this, you can see we can choose what table or what query we want to base our report on. We're going to replace it. We're going to put it on the address book. And we want the last name through zip code. And then we're just going to let it do everything. If you click next, it wants to know if you want grouping levels. Maybe we want it to group it by state. So where they put everybody in Kansas together, everybody in Oklahoma together, everybody in Texas together. Okay. We don't want any grouping, so let's just click next. This is where do we want to our fields in any particular order. Maybe we want it last name first, so we would tell it click here and say last name, and it would put it in last name in ascending order. The next is do we want it columnar, tabular, or justified? How do we want our report to look? Maybe we want it landscape instead of portrait. So you can change it all there. And next, let you know what title do you want. We're just going to leave it as address book. And now we're going to hit finish. And here is our report. And if I'm in the print preview right now, if I zoom out or zoom in or zoom out, sorry, you can see here's my report. And it lets us know that when the report was run, it was going to show up in the corner, how many pages are in the report, and then here is last name, first name, city, street, and state. And so we have our report, and you can see Donald Duck is on here because he's in that report. So anytime you update the address book, your report's automatically going to be updated. And this lets us know, and then we can always just print it from here. Now, up here you can see there's lots of different ways that we can change our report. If I close the print preview, here's the design view for the report. And again, you can add pictures, you can make all sorts of changes to this. We don't get into that in this class, but if it's something you're interested in, let me know and I can give you some information and give you some ideas on where to go to learn more about Access. So we're going to close this, and you should have address book query, family in Kansas, address, and address book. And this is the assignment for class. Now before you can submit it in Blackboard, you do have to close it. So we're going to come up here to this little X, close it, and now you're ready to go back into Blackboard and submit your Access file for grading.